Hi, this is Blair Pleasant of COMMfusion and BCStrategies. Today I'm joined by Malachi Threadgill. He's the VP of UCC Marketing of GoTo, and we're going to talk about the unique needs of verticals in the UCaaS and CCaaS world. Every vertical has specific needs, and a general purpose UCaaS and CCaaS solution may not always be the best way to go. And over the past decade, we've seen huge innovations in the UCaaS and CCaaS market, but not all communication challenges are the same for every company. And the needs of a healthcare provider, managing patient access is going to be very different from that of an automotive dealership who's coordinating service appointments, or a university supporting students across multiple channels. And there are regulatory requirements to think about, operational workflows, customer expectations, and business outcomes can vary dramatically from one industry to another. So what's happening is we're seeing a growing demand for more tailored solutions and platforms that don't just provide communication capabilities, but those that really understand the unique workflows, integrations, and experiences that matter most within those specific industries. So today, Malachi and I are going to talk about how organizations in sectors like healthcare, automotive, education, and some others are approaching communications and customer experiences, what challenges these companies are facing, and how technology providers like GoTo are adapting to meet these evolving needs. So thanks for being here, Malachi, and for providing your insights. So why don't you give a very brief introduction of who you are?
Thank you, Blair. Yes, my name is Malachi, obviously. I've been with GoTo for a little bit over 6 months now, and I came here for a lot of what you just discussed. I've been in this industry for a long time. I took a brief detour and started doing some research and worked for another analyst firm I won't mention on this call, but I've been around this space for a long time. And when we think about kind of where we're at and kind of more broadly what we've seen in this space, is that over the years, the commoditization of a lot of technology. I mean, when I was in this industry in 2008, 2009, everyone was saying the PSTN was going to be gone in 10 years. It's still here. But we've seen a lot of this broad hosted VoIP to kind of UC to UCaaS. And what's really interesting over the last half decade or so is just the specialization. And we're not just seeing it with the things that we're going to be talking about today with some of the stuff that GoTo is working on, but just in general, I think as we've seen the commoditization of the broader industry, building out those specializations into specific verticals where there's stronger product fit is incredibly important. And so as I was looking for where I wanted to go in my career and seeing the tools and the innovations that GoTo is working on, it was incredibly exciting just to see the take rate and the excitement of the business challenges that we've been able to solve. And so the vertical strategy actually launched specifically with SKUs about 6 months before I joined. And it's just been really exciting to see how it's been going ever since.
So obviously there have been lots of changes, as you said. So why do you think industries now really need these more purpose-built communications and customer engagement experiences?
Yeah, I think that the table stakes have kind of been laid, right? First, we needed dial tone, and then we needed some just basic integrations. But as businesses have continued to evolve, having more specific integrations starts to become more important. And so when you start to just look at your business and you look at the verticals or industries, and where you have more product market fit, I have a larger percentage of companies in this vertical. Historically, GoTo, which our UCC product came from Jive, was very focused on education. And then some of the other areas that we were just seeing some strong synergies. If you ask your customers what they want, they're going to tell you. And then if you build the solutions that tailor to what they want, you start to see some more fit. And so that's kind of the genesis of kind of where we were starting to build that out. The second layer to that is that for a long time, because everything was table stakes, there wasn't, product-led growth. And when you start to think about what tools and solutions can we start to bolt on, and not bolt on, but embed into the solution, we can really start to build out specific SKUs for those verticals where they may not need a certain feature over here. So why would we charge them for it in the SKU, but they need this over here? So now we start to tailor not just the solutions, but the packaging in a way that makes it affordable for them.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's get a little bit more specific and talk about some of the unique vertical use cases for automotive, healthcare, and education, because I know that's where GoTo's had a lot of focus. So let's start with automotive.
Okay.
Again, I know GoTo has done a lot in this area, and as you said, this was your first real vertical focus. And in fact, so my husband and I are actually car shopping right now. So I see some of the issues that they're dealing with, and car dealers have to focus not just on selling cars, but ongoing service relationships, and now connected vehicle experiences. So what would you say are some of the key challenges that dealerships are facing, and how are they rethinking customer communications? And maybe talk about some of the unique use cases for automotive.
Absolutely. So there's a couple different things here. It's funny because I've been on this kind of talk track recently, and just coming from my background and kind of where we are in terms of what customers expect. And we've entered this new paradigm, and in that paradigm is that we don't benchmark our experience versus a competitor. A lot of people out there they're just really focused on, oh, here's my competitor, here's my competitor. Whether you're a small business, a small auto shop, or a 40 rooftop dealer, it's not about, it is in some instances about the competition. But the reality is that we have the right now as customers, no matter what we're doing, to compare and demand exceptional customer experiences. So the benchmark today isn't about, if you're an auto dealer down the street, do I buy a car from this auto dealer because it's closer? It's about the experience when I come in. How clean is the showroom? How do I feel when I'm in there? How well do they know my experience? Most people buy a car between every 4 and 7 years, but they take their cars in multiple times a year, whether it's a flat tire, oil change, whatever that is. And so one bad experience, not just with kind of the go-to solutions, which are the digital experiences, but even when you're experiencing in the dealership what that looks like. I'm not going to change my dealer. My wife and I take her vehicle to a dealer that's much further away than all of the oil change shops and tire shops, not because it's actually more expensive to take it there, but it's the experience that we feel, the trust that we have when we're in there. And so when we think about that and what that actually means for dealers, and actually we can talk about healthcare. I don't change my doctor just because a newer doctor opens down the street. Some negative experience has to drive that. And so across these verticals, it really is about the exceptional experiences that we have. And so the goal with GoTo, and luckily, our GM Damon, who's incredible, has spent a lot of time in this industry, and he did take a detour into automotive for a number of years. And so he was really able to take masterclass in terms of what the DMSs look like and what those look like. And so when we look at the automotive industry in particular, there are two things that are true. Number one is customers demand exceptional experiences. And the revenue that comes in that once every 4 years or once every 7 years is great. But the reality is those service centers and the things that happen in between that are incredibly important. And so when you think about how do we create that dealership showroom-like experience across the board, we say, okay, what tools and systems can be there? Well, with employees at these dealers, there's high turnover because the call centers are very stressful. They're having to swivel chair between a bunch of different systems. Sometimes they're texting from their own phone, and so if they leave, they have the relationship with the customer for any of that type of follow-up. So there's a lot of disjointed systems. And so what's really interesting about GoTo and makes us different than most, not all players in the space, is our fully embedded solution. That was the core of what made us exceptional. The second thing that we look at, and I don't want to make this about GoTo, I want to make it about the experiences, is saying, how can we take an embedded all-in-one solution, whether it's WhatsApp, SMS, voice, whatever, provide you the analytics in that embedded solution, make it easy to use across multiple rooftops. And then you say the dealer principal knows exactly how much a phone call costs. They know exactly how much a missed phone call costs. Now we embed the solution. Not superficially, a lot of people out there say, oh, we're embedded with CRM. okay, we have a basic integration with Salesforce is what they mean, or HubSpot or whatever. But we really took the time to understand the space. We really started to embed with Vin Solutions, Techion, Car Wars, Drive Centric. And so the employees who are stressful with the swivel chairing, they can stay in one DMS, they can focus there, they can handle all of the journey, wherever it's coming from, soup to nuts. All of that information that comes through GoTo gets passed into the DMS so they understand the entire process. They have full visibility where maybe sometimes I do want to talk to you via SMS. Maybe I have a couple minutes I want to call and reschedule. And those solutions are really what we focused on building. And so last March, we launched a true SKU for the automotive industry. And then from then, we've been able to see massive success. In fact, I'm probably not supposed to say this, but we've seen it's better than a coin flip in terms of our win rate right now in the automotive industry, just because of building this and making it easy for the automotive dealers to use, integrate, and have a single pane of glass to see the entirety of the integrations.
Okay, so with automotive, obviously if they miss a call, it could be, they're missing a sale of, tens of thousands of dollars. Let's talk about healthcare. If they miss a call, it could be life or death. It's people's health we're talking about. So looking at healthcare, these organizations, are under pressure to improve patient access and engagement. They're dealing with staffing shortages, strict compliance requirements, which, is really important. So let's talk about healthcare a little bit and some of the specific challenges and use cases in the healthcare industry.
Yeah, I think it's very similar and very different. There is
I like that, similar but different.
Yeah, and I say that because buying a car can be incredibly stressful, right? There are certain dealers that do feel predatory. I hate when I go in and they're moving the magic cups around and financing if I go for 7 years and all that stuff. Like that's just one aspect of it that's outside of anything that we can control. On the other side, when we think about a very similar situation with healthcare, or excuse me, with automotive, we took the same approach. So we launched the healthcare SKU this year, earlier this year during HIMSS. But we have the same type of integration strategy: Athena, Epic, ModMed, Salesforce Health Cloud, Oracle Health, right? Making sure that we're passing the right data that allows practices to stay and remain HIPAA compliant, and make sure we're turning on and off the right things to build a SKU that works for them. But the part that's really interesting about healthcare in particular, and this is an area of service that's really interesting. And you think about the next evolution of kind of AI receptionist, right? So what does AI receptionist mean? And I'm going to go into kind of why that part's important, and then the AI component becomes incredibly important. For the dealer that knows how much every call costs, I can call anytime, day or night, and I could schedule my appointment with an AI receptionist. Great, that's awesome. When we start to think about healthcare, I'm going to look at it in like two lenses. One is, if I'm calling for the first time to schedule a call with a new primary care physician, I don't want to give all my personal information to a robot, right? So if I know it's a new caller, let's just pass them through, give them the red carpet to get them to a human, to make sure that we're collecting the right information, diagnosing what's going on, making sure that all the information is correct. However, if I have a scheduled appointment, I might not necessarily want to wait 3 minutes to talk to a human. So now I could use AI receptionist to just change my appointment. Did my blood work get completed? Is my prescription ready for pickup, right? So, that layers onto everything that I said about the tools and solutions, that kind of that full single pane of glass for your patients that you have in place. The second part of that is, let's say I do make a call to my doctor and I am suffering chest pain or whatever. I can route them immediately to a live person. I can triage everyone else and get them to the right person at the right time immediately based on keywords, tagging, etc. But one of the biggest things that I think AI has been playing a big part for us and our success in the healthcare industry in particular is the during call and post call capabilities that the platform embeds. And so there's massive turnover, even more turnover today in the healthcare industry, in the contact center or CX type of capabilities. And for smaller practices, every employee is kind of a frontline employee, a frontline practitioner, if you will. If you're calling with pain, how do you handle it? But additionally, if you're calling, health situations can be incredibly emotional for you if your family member is dealing with something, the uncertainty of what's going wrong or right.
I mean,
And
it doesn't
one
get more
thing,
emotional than healthcare.
100%, I mean, you're spot on. I think that one thing is that's truly unique about the healthcare space is that everyone understands what it is to be a patient.
Mhm.
And if you're the luckiest person in the world, that's awesome. But then you've likely had the experience of knowing someone who's been a patient, and that shared uncertainty is incredibly stressful when you're having to. And this is where I think agnostic of GoTo, but this is like one of the really good positives I think of kind of AI tools and AI in these particular instances is really fascinating and important, is because when I'm calling in, yeah, I want to reschedule. I don't want to wait 3 minutes. Like I'm busy, right? Whatever. That's great. But very rarely do we look at the other side of this. And this is where the true magic, I think, happens, is that there's so much stress on the customer service side of healthcare, where we see massive burnout, we see massive turnover, which costs a lot of money for training and onboarding and retention. And so, why does that happen? It's because there's a massive stress point between overworked, care professionals, overstressed patients, and the other part of this is that oftentimes, I have good days and bad days. I have a sick kid literally right now, and it's summer break.
Mm.
But when you think about, everyone can't come in and have it be the best day. So they're not going to be able to provide the best experience every single time to a patient that's calling in. The second part of this that I think is really fascinating and important as well is that it's difficult. Sometimes you're dealing with an employee who's fearful or afraid because they don't feel good, they're hurt, they're in pain. Other times they're upset, they're stressed because of insurance or lack of insurance. All of these types of things play a massive role in the conversations and the relationships between the practices and the patients. And so the during call AI in those instances becomes incredibly important. So it can measure the sentiment, the tone of the call. It can coach real time to make sure that the customer service person that's on the phone doesn't have to stress, swivel, get upset, handle it. It helps manage that conversation, helps them talk through that conversation in HIPAA compliant ways, or helps the business stay HIPAA compliant based on the rules and the systems. And then it also makes sure that the right questions are being asked. And then additionally, after the call, it can be used for coaching, resolution, and everything else. So not only is it truly assisting the customer service person during the call to make that stressful interaction is it's not zero stress, but hopefully less stressful than it would otherwise be. It helps train and coach on the other end with the during and the post experience as well. And so when you combine all of this together, I think these are areas that a lot of the AI tools that get truly embedded into the solution really become a superpower. And so when we think about the launch of that SKU earlier this year, it's been received. We don't have our win rate is headed towards a similar type of win rate that we're seeing in the automotive industry, just because it's truly resonating with these small practices that can't necessarily afford these very, very expensive, monolithic, true contact center solutions. But when you embed these solutions, especially around the AI and the analytics, it truly becomes powerful.
Yep. And we didn't mention, but GoTo does focus on SMBs. So again, it's a lot of these, private practices, couple doctors, couple dentists, whatever. So it's not, the big, Kaiser or whatever. It's really these more local types of healthcare organizations.
And that's exactly true. And we do have some very well-known large logos in both automotive and healthcare, but the product is purpose-built, right? How can we make it affordable for the smaller business? How can we bring some of these capabilities? They don't need everything under the sun. They're a small business. Maybe they got one, two, or three different rooftops. It could be a single location. It could be a small multi-location. That's another area. I won't go too much into it, but if you call one, in the contact center capabilities, to make sure you're going to the right place. I had that issue with a foot injury last year where the contact center was out of one location. I went to a different location, and that was just frustrating.
Mm.
So being able to have it all embedded under, multi-location is another unique feature that I think is a big differentiator.
Okay. So what should organizations in these verticals or other verticals be thinking about when it comes to their communication and CX needs, today and then looking, in the future?
Yeah, I think it's kind of twofold. Is like number one is like, what does your tech stack look like today? I think most companies today pay for technology that they had 5 years ago because they bought it 5 years ago, and it's just kind of business as usual. I think that organization and what's really interesting is if we looked at this in the most broad sense over the last 15, 20 years, when it was the transition to the cloud or digital transformation, which we're still going through for certain industries, it was really the capex versus opex component. It was turning your, having the PBX in the closet and having to pay every month to get it, repaired, or moving to the cloud. That sounded really good to the CFO 15 years ago. Today, every everything is a service, and so like that makes it creates a different perspective of how people are spending money. So there's a lot of different disjointed tools and solutions that people are using. So regardless, I think especially in the SMB, they want enterprise grade like experiences, but they can't afford it. So look at the entirety of your tech stack, and then I would suggest that they look for areas that solutions like GoTo in a lot of ways, like others in some ways, have a fully embedded solution. So what can I do that's all embedded? I want a complete view of my customer journey, my patient journey, whatever I want to add in there. We see in particular that there are a lot of people, and even not the verticals that we talked about today, that they're paying for a solution that's solving a problem that they have, that another solution could solve for free because it's embedded in this more broad tech stack. That's step one. Just look at all of your OpEx and what you're investing in, and see what that looks like. And then the second part of that is if I am looking for an all-in-one embedded solution, I'd recommend, why are you bolting on AI if you're already embedding everything else? I think like that's the big key here, is find a solution that's embedding AI, not bolting on AI. Because if I have a full view of a customer journey or an experience, that I may still have my DMS, I may still have my CRM because the data exists there for a reason. But for all of my channels, and I can find fewer solutions that'll decrease my OpEx, and I can truly embed AI. A, you're going to get cost savings. And then B, you're going to provide better customer experience because you're going to be able to get to the bottom line. You're going to be able to answer those questions more quickly. You're going to be able to train your employees and just provide a better experience for your customers. Because once again, like, they're not benchmarking you against the tire shop down the street, the dentist that just opened. It's all about the best experiences that they could ever have.
Okay, well, you provided some great information. I really appreciate it. So I think companies in these verticals or other verticals have a lot to think about, and there's a lot going on out there, with AI, and things are changing constantly. So have to really keep up on these things. So thank you, Malachi, and thank you everyone for joining. And until next time.
Thank you.